Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 369. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about what our guest claims is the most underrated city in Europe, Bucharest, Romania.
Got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. This episode of the Amateur Traveler is again sponsored by Viator. Viator doesn't have any trips for Romania, so I was looking at trips for my next destination, which is Toronto, Canada, for the TBEX conference, and I saw that they have discounts on city passes, hop on and off tours, and even a day trip to Niagara Falls. You can check out all of those specials at amateurtraveler.com/tours. Before we get into this week's interview, I do have three news stories for you. Now, I don't want to say that Carnival's cruise ship, the Triumph, is cursed, but they do seem to be having a number of problems with them. And they had problems again this week when a fuel barge near the docked cruise ship exploded. It might be time to rename that ship. Virgin America has just introduced a new service, which is Mile High Flirting. It's basically a dating program for the airplane. You can designate a hottie on the Virgin's digital seat map, browse the menu, and have a drink, snack, or meal sent over to them. I am interested to see if that one's going to catch on. One odd story that's coming out of the Boston bombings and America's unfamiliarity with geography is that the ambassador of the Czech Republic has felt it necessary to explain to people that the bombing suspect may be Chechen, but that doesn't mean he comes from the Czech Republic, but from Chechnya, which is a different country. I don't know why I think you shouldn't have to explain that. For links to all three of those stories, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Wandering Earl from wanderingearl.com, who's come to talk to us about Bucharest. welcome to the
Thanks
show.
for having me. Yeah, thank you very much.
I don't know. I almost called you Wandering. Mr. Earl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I have had that in some places. A letter waiting for me addressed to Mr. Wandering.
Mr. Wandering.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Bucharest in Romania.
Yes.
Why should we go there?
I'm going to say people should go there because, first of all, I do believe it is one of the most underrated cities in probably all of Europe, especially Eastern Europe. It has a lot to offer, but nobody ever talks about it. So in the end, nobody really knows about this city because you don't really hear about it. You think of Romania, everyone mentions Transylvania, and they think of the beautiful little medieval towns up in the mountains. Mm-hmm. For Bucharest, the entry point to the country always gets left out. And yeah, I would love to encourage more people to go because it really has so much more to offer than people think. I spent 9 months there, living there last year. I've been back and forth quite a lot. And every time I go, the city opens my eyes even more, and I just fall in love with it more and more each time.
What led you to go there originally?
I was actually on a Eurail trip around Europe, and Romania was one of the stops on it. It was sort of towards the end of my trip, and I was getting very tired after about 2 months of doing the Eurail thing. And I just decided, you know what, instead of any more traveling, I'm just going to stay put for my final 10 days. I happened to be in Bucharest. I said, that's it. I'm just going to stay here. I met a couple of people through couch surfing that were great people, and I stayed for the 10 days. I then had to go home to the U.S., and then about a month later, I was like, you know what, I'm going back. And that's when I went back to Bucharest and ended up staying for 9 months the second time around.
Now, do you have to rebrand when you stay one place for 9 months?
No, I wander around different neighborhoods and stuff. No, I do take side trips. That was my base for 9 months. So I was traveling around the Balkans and other Eastern European countries for a couple of weeks here and there, and then I'd come back to Bucharest.
Excellent. So if we go to Bucharest, what are the highlights? What should we see first to make sure that we have on our itinerary?
Yeah, okay. I will always say the first day, you should definitely just tick off the main highlights, which include the old city center. Typical European thing, you have your old city, beautiful city center that they've recently been renovating. It's only actually been about, from what I hear, five years or so since that's even been a place where people go to hang out at all. Very small area, but beautiful. Then you can head down to what can only be described as incredible Parliament building, which was built by their communist leader Ceausescu. It is, I believe, the largest civilian building in the world. It's just massive. The design, the size is just out of control, needs to be seen. And then I would head over to some of the beautiful parks, because one thing that Bucharest has is a lot of parks. They have beautiful Cismagu Gardens, beautiful Herăstrău Park, lots of museums up in the parks as well, and just great places where you can spend a whole day actually in some of these parks and really have a wonderful time out. That's sort of the main simple highlights. And the thing which I will talk about soon that I like about Bucharest is many of the places that I would recommend seeing pretty much would never get a mention in the guidebooks. Yeah, you basically have to, it takes a little bit of effort to find them, but once you know, you're on your way.
And I want to say that with the second one you mentioned there, the parliamentary building, that's, as I recall, where the big crowds were gathered there after the Berlin Wall fell, after the Iron Curtain was coming down, and Ceausescu was one of those last holdouts, and the people gathered, I want to say, in front of the Parliament building.
Wasn't actually the Parliament. He actually was taken out before it was completed.
Okay.
So that was actually he was at the main
palace?
government building. It was just the main government building in the more closer to the exact city center. And he was on the balcony there, which is where he fled up to the roof, jumped in a helicopter, and headed off to where the army base was at the time, which obviously didn't go well for him. But then they completed building the Parliament, and actually the first person to stand on the balcony and to address the masses from the balcony of the Parliament Palace was Mr. Michael Jackson.
Oh, gee.
Good piece of trivia there, yes. So probably not what Ceausescu had in mind, but that's how it went. And
wow, that's funny.
It is fun, yeah.
And you teased me there with things that the guidebooks leave out. That sounds like a perfect thing for the amateur traveler. What things would you recommend that we're not going to find in the guidebooks?
Yep. First of all, the things I mentioned before, that's what you'll find in the guidebooks, and then most of them will say, that's enough, get out, head north. Pretty much. But what I will say about Bucharest, it's a city where what you need to do, you need to get on couch surfing, you need to get on some of these social sites, and you need to meet up. I'm not saying stay with people, just meet up with people, local people, for a drink, for a meal, because what I've found in Bucharest is that every single person has their favorite neighborhoods. There's hundreds and hundreds of neighborhoods, each with their own character and personality. And every local person that I've met has their own few favorites. And sometimes they don't even know about the other ones that I found out through other people. It's just the way that Bucharest is set up. And that's how I discovered all these different neighborhoods just scattered around where you'll find just amazing gardens. You'll find incredible architecture, neighborhoods for just to go for a stroll. Some of the best tea and coffee cafes that I found anywhere, where I'm not just talking about the quality of the coffee and the tea, but you'll find just locals out and about, sitting together, talking. It's so easy to meet people in Bucharest. You just have to start a conversation, and you'll see where it goes. People start inviting you to this neighborhood, to that neighborhood. You'll find little hole-in-the-wall bars, little hole-in-the-wall restaurants. You'll be invited to people's homes. It's just that's the kind of city that it is. But it takes that effort of actually talking to people so that you can find these gems. It just amazes me, for a small city of only 2 million people, how many neighborhoods are in this city that each have their own personality, like I said, and have something unique to offer.
And before we get more specific about some of the neighborhoods, you mentioned talking to locals. Language. How much can you get by in English? How good is your Romanian?
My Romanian is pretty terrible. It is a very difficult language to learn. But luckily for Romanians, because it is a Romance language, which many people don't realize, but it is a Romance language. Since it's considered to be pretty much the most difficult of the Romance languages, they have a pretty easy time learning every other language. So it's not uncommon to meet a Romanian who speaks Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English.
When we say it's the most difficult of the Romance languages, I mean, just over the border, we've got Hungary, and we've got a language that has nothing to do with either German or French, which English derives from. So it's not as difficult as some languages in the region.
True. It's nothing like Hungarian. Exactly. I mean, if you have a little bit of a base in, say, Spanish or French or Italian even, you'll definitely pick. It's one of those languages you'll see one sign and you can understand it completely. You go to the next sign, you can't understand a word. But it's just... They do have about 20% Slavic words as well thrown in there, just because of the neighbors, of course.
Yeah, it always sounds to me like French with a Russian accent.
Yeah, that's not a bad way of putting it at all.
And people are surprised. Romanian speakers in this area are surprised when I say, "Now, are you Romanian?" And they're like, "How did you know that I wasn't Russian?" It's like, well, it's got a different sound. It is a Romance language. It sounds very differently.
But as far as communicating, it is very easy.
Okay.
They speak English at an incredible level. I would say sometimes places you'll say, people 30 and younger speak English. I would go as high as in the mid-40s, and anyone in mid-40s and younger definitely speaks very good English. From taxi drivers to shop owners, pretty much anyone you come across. It's pretty amazing.
Okay. Now, you mentioned neighborhoods and some gardens and coffee houses and things. Do you have some favorites that you can give us?
Yeah, a little hard to describe, but basically there's one park called Chichmigu Gardens. If you head off sort of behind the Chichmigu Gardens, everyone goes into the main entrance from Chichmigu Gardens. It's in the city center. If you walk straight through the gardens to the back, you're in this fascinating neighborhood of all these really, really old churches. You have a mix of these really fascinating Russian-style churches, as well as dispersed with some cafes over there. So behind Chichmigu Gardens is one fascinating neighborhood. Another one is right off of, Strada Moshilor. Moshilor is a big street, and sort of just off to the side of the center. And this is where you'll find a place called La Metok. Now, this is exactly epitomizes the Bucharest experience. La Metok is located in a residential neighborhood. You're just walking down the street. There's no sign whatsoever that there's anything in this particular plot of land. There's some trees. There's a tiny little gate stuck in between the trees. You just open up the gate. It looks like you're going into someone's house. And literally you are. And this in front of this house is a garden. And it's one of the best little cafes that I found anywhere, where people are out there playing games out in the summer. People are out there talking. You just sit down at these big communal tables. You talk with each other, and before you know it, you'll have plenty of friends. That's the kind of thing that you'll find there, where there's nothing marked, and you just sort of stumble upon it. Another neighborhood that I really like is up by the main Herăstrău Park as well, where you'll find lots of museums, a couple of what I will definitely say is my favorite restaurants in all of Bucharest. This is a big park up where there's a huge lake in the middle of it, and if you're sort of around what's called the Village Museum, or sometimes called the Peasant Museum, which is an interesting museum with an amazing restaurant attached to it, that neighborhood has a lot to offer as well, as far as architecture and a lot of museums over there. Another one of my favorites is La Culte. This is an area that's about 15 minutes by tram north of the city center, and it's sort of it's right on a river. It might actually be a lake. It would be a lake that looks like a river. But here you have a combination of parks, little hidden cafes, little hidden restaurants. You have a lot of student housing for some of the universities up here, so it has a really nice upbeat vibe. And again, you just walk down the street, lots of little bakeries in that area as well. Nice athletic center where you always see people out and about swimming, and again, another great place to meet people. And there really are endless types of these neighborhoods scattered around.
Excellent. Now, you threw out there that two of the neighborhoods had different museums. Did you have some favorite museums in Bucharest?
Yes, I will say the Village Museum, or also known as the Peasant Museum at times, that is an interesting museum. It's actually won some awards. It's not what you would think if you're coming from a place, say, like New York City, and you think of museums. You don't walk in, you're not going to be impressed by the display cases or the lighting or anything like that. But it is, if you want to get a great feel for the culture of all of Romania, because Romania is very diverse and all their regions are quite distinct and unique from one another. And this museum sort of puts it all on display, and you can spend a lot of time there. It gives a great history and a great lesson on the culture there. So definitely the Village Museum. And again, I have to repeat it. Once you go through the Village Museum, definitely go to the back of the museum and eat at the restaurant that's attached, because it is one of the cheapest yet most delicious restaurants in the city by far. There's a reason why you probably have to wait about a half an hour, but it's well worth it in the end.
And you say eat at the museum. What would you recommend we should try? What should we eat in Bucharest?
Oh boy, yes. The good thing about this museum is they have food from it sort of translates roughly to peasants' food, so food from the countryside and things like that. What I would do is definitely start off with hearty soup. They have a sort of a nice creamy chicken soup that's really great. Then I would move on to probably, if you're a meat eater, there's stuffed cabbage. That's a fantastic meal. Yeah, pretty much all over the city you can get it, and it's great. And then you would have to finish off with the dessert called papanash, which it's not the healthiest thing on the planet, but it's good to do once. It's sort of donut balls, if you will, that are covered in cream and some fruit, and often stuffed with a sweet cheese as well. Fantastic way to finish off your meal, I must say. And the beer. Beer in Romania is fantastic as well, so that's a good thing to wash down your meal as well.
Got a favorite Romanian brand?
Chuk. Chuk is sort of one of their standard ones. I like Chuk, and also I like Silva. Silva is another one. For a small country, they actually, people-wise, they have quite a lot of beer. But yeah, I like Chuk and Silva are definitely my two favorites.
Excellent. You were there for 9 months, so you got to see it in a variety of seasons. What's the best time of year to go to Romania, in your opinion?
Absolutely, without a doubt, the summer, because I actually stayed there throughout the winter while I was there first, and I will not be doing that again in this lifetime. I had never before been in minus 25 Celsius. I'd never experienced it before, and I can't handle that. But the summertime is beautiful. As soon as the first day it gets warm, it's still a little bit even cold in April. So starting, I'd say, around May, it starts to get a little bit nicer, and then all the way through, say, mid-September. So at least for Bucharest. In the mountains, it's already cold by mid-September. But Bucharest itself, I definitely want to try to get as much over the summer period as you can.
Okay. And then how about a particular day that was the most fun, day of the year, a festival or holiday or something like that?
That's a hard one, but what I will say is is something that I wasn't expecting from this region, is that they have a ton of festivals, something that I would more in line with, say, in India or a Latin American country where they have festivals all the time. In Romania, there are holidays all the time, and they celebrate them pretty intensely, whether it's if it's Children's Day or if it's Women's Day or Father's Day or any of those holidays. They really, suddenly there's vendors everywhere all over the city. And there's little festivals. You have streets that are blocked off with music and arts and local performers everywhere. They do these things. And some festivals where they actually, every year on that same festival, they paint an entire wall of a building, the outside wall, white, and they get local artists together and create an incredible mural. And then the next year, they just put the white paint over it again and do the same thing. Really interesting to see. And most of the holidays that take place during the summer are the best, I will say, since you can actually go outside and enjoy them, which is probably why they celebrate them so intensely at that time.
Excellent. Biggest surprise you had with Bucharest?
Biggest surprise, yes. I will say as soon as I arrived, which is pretty much what a lot of people, their initial reaction is, I immediately came to the conclusion that this is not going to be a fun place at all. A lot of the buildings you do have a lot of that communist architecture,
communist drab.
Great blocks everywhere. It's 100. I won't lie. It's definitely not the prettiest city in the world. It's not even close to being in the top anything of far as prettiest city in the world. So your initial reaction, which was mine as well, is just, oh boy, this is a gloomy place. I need to get out of here. But suddenly, as soon as you start meeting one local, two locals, which will happen in your first day because people are so friendly there that you end up meeting people very quickly. Again, you start to see the city as a place that's very vibrant, has a great energy to it, and it's a wonderful place to live. and people super friendly, and you can have an incredible time there. So I think that's the biggest surprise, is that almost everybody's initial reaction is something pretty negative when you step out of, whether it's the plane, out of the airport, out of the train station, the bus station. It's like, oh boy, this is not going to be fun. And then, yeah, if you stick around for 2 days, one day, maybe it might not be so fun. But it's the kind of place you stay a little bit of time, even a week, meet some people, and I will guarantee you will have an absolute blast. And I know many people who did planning to go for a week and ended up moving there as well. I'm definitely not the only one who that's happened to. You meet a lot of foreigners who are living there when they were just their initial trip was just a few days, sort of similar to me.
So your first impression, not a pretty city.
Nope.
You're there for a while. What's the prettiest spot you found?
I would say there'll be a toss-up between in the Herrestrau Park area, which is up by Piazza Victoriae, which is one of the big sort of plazas up sort of towards the north side of the city. That area is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Just you have the lake, you have the gardens, this endless park that just doesn't stop, and you have a lot of beautiful buildings that are lining the park as well. So I would say that's one of the prettiest areas. And then I will say the old city center, which even in the 9 months that I was there, went under a huge transformation where they started to fix up a lot of the buildings that were falling apart and had been that way for quite a long time. And they keep expanding the old city center by one street at a time. And even in that 9 months, it branched out a few streets and really became a happening, beautiful place to go hang out. That's where I would go a lot of times, just to go to a cafe, do some work for a few hours each day. Or that's where I would meet friends. Just a beautiful place to walk around, whether it's day or night.
Excellent. So you mentioned the festivals, other places to get in touch with the locals, art, culture, sports, those sort of things.
There's a very big drinking scene. This is what I tell a lot of people, is that Bucharest is one of the only places I've been to where you could walk into any bar on a Friday night by yourself, walk up to anybody, start talking to them, and that's it. You'll now have friends. You'll be talking to them. There's no uncomfortableness about it. That's how easy it is to make friends. There are a little bit hard to find out, but this is where locals come in through couch surfing. Again, there's a lot of these hidden art galleries. It's just crazy. It's so bizarre. You would never expect. You see these rundown building with signs that say do not enter, or things like that really would obviously turn you away. And sometimes friends would be like, no, we can go. And we would go and walk up this stairwell, and again, this dilapidated building up to the 5th floor, and there's nothing. There's boarded up windows. You get to the 5th floor, and there's this incredible little art gallery with a cafe, and there's 20 people hanging out, and suddenly you just met a whole new group of people. It's that kind of place. Yeah, it's really bizarre. There's one in particular right outside the old city center where, my friend really had to convince me to go into that building. Ironically enough, it was a fascinating exhibit on Bucharest's architecture, and met some great people there, and yeah, it's such a bizarre thing. Lots of sporting events going around, lots of football matches. They're pretty into their football clubs as well. And again, another great thing, concerts everywhere. Bucharest has about 5 or 6 main plazas: Piazza Romana, Piazza Victoriae, Piazza Universitate, Unirii. And what they do is they have these concerts always outside in these main plazas. One of the most common spots is actually in front of the Parliament building. And it's an amazing thing to do, just to go and see it. The setting is unreal. And they close down the street. The concert is held, they set up a stage, everything right in the intersection. And so they have concerts all the time. Classical music, I've heard, lots of opera going on. They have anything, whatever you like, they have it. And another great way to get out there and socialize.
Excellent. Besides meeting the locals, any resources that you found for finding some of the local museums or coffee shops or hidden things? Do you have a great post that we can link to on your site, or someplace that you found?
If you do actually go to my site and just look under my Romania category, I do have several posts of where I've written about basically what it's like to live in Bucharest, and mentioning some of my favorite places that I have stumbled upon while I have been there. I will say that is one of the toughest parts about this city, is that there is not much information really at all. I actually know a couple of Romanian friends who are trying desperately to start an informative website that does have all these hidden gems that, as of the moment, are impossible to find unless you actually know somebody, or you talk to people, or you really just meet the right person. So there are people doing it, but it is, I will say, unfortunately, it is very difficult to try to find this information. Again, that's why I definitely recommend just meeting somebody through Couchsurfing for coffee for something. They're going to know. They're going to know absolutely, because that's part of their daily life. But for a foreigner just to show up, the tourism infrastructure is not set up very well over there, unfortunately. But yeah, it's all about people in this city. I will say that it's all about meeting people in this city.
Best day trip out of town.
All right, for a day trip, I would say up to the town of Sinaia, where you have it's just about it's not so bad, about 2 hours or so away, 2.5 hours by train, and that's where they have the Pelish Castle, which is it's just you have to see it. Basically, the castle was built in about 10 different styles, so every part of the castle is built in a different architectural style, and it's located in a valley just at the foot of beautiful mountains that lead into Transylvania. So you can go to the castle, you can walk around it, you can then take a lift, or you can even hike, which is even better, up to the top of the mountain, and you get a beautiful view out over Transylvania. Lots of mountains, lots of valleys, lots of little towns below. And I'd say that's a great one for a day trip, since it's only about 2.5 hours away by train.
And it sounds like you were pretty much getting around on foot or by train, that there wasn't any need for a car or anything like that. Good enough transportation by public transportation.
Excellent transportation, pretty much anywhere you want to go. Well, the trains are fantastic. When I went there, even local Romanians would tell me, the trains are terrible. Be careful, it's terrible. It's just horrendous. I got on there, I was shocked, because the trains are actually fantastic. Even a lot of locals didn't know that they had updated all the trains, and they're actually wonderful. They're right up there with pretty much Western Europe standards. So. And they very convenient, usually on time, and gets you all over the country. And then what they also have is a great system of mini buses. They don't really have too many actual buses. There's actually really not even a main bus stand in Bucharest, which is strange for a capital city, but they have mini buses. So you just, wherever your destination is, you find out where that mini bus company is leaving from, and they just get you all over the country as well in pretty quick time, since they drive a little bit on the fast side. But it's a great way to get to sort of some of these smaller regions that say the trains don't reach, and they get you there completely direct. And so that's what they use: trains and mini buses, minivans, and it got me all over the country without any hassles, any problems whatsoever.
Excellent. One warning you would give before somebody goes to Bucharest: you should really know what?
You should really know where you're going to stay, I would say, for the first couple of nights, because it could be a little bit intimidating, or where you're going to stay in general. I would do a little bit of research as far as neighborhoods. Not saying that it's definitely not a dangerous city by any means, but I would say you'd want to do a little bit of research so that you do end up in a place where you are going to get that feeling, that you're going to feel that energy, you are going to get that positive vibe. Because I do know some people have ended up not planning it, ended up just picking a hostel or a hotel at the last minute upon arrival. They end up in some neighborhood, and it really sort of it's less pretty than the initial.
So you're saying you have a bad initial opinion, and then it goes down when you get to your hotel.
Yeah, then it goes down once they get to their place. Because also, I will say, unfortunately, accommodation standards are not the best in the budget category in this city, mostly because there aren't that many budget travelers coming through. I would do a little research, definitely find a place that is highly recommended, definitely find a place that's in the central area where you can walk to a lot of things. And that will make a huge difference when you arrive. This is one city where I wouldn't just show up and try to figure it out from there.
Interesting, because I'm guessing you have done that in many cities.
Yes, I actually do that in most cities. Okay. But luckily on this one, when I had come through on the Eurail trip, I had a recommendation from a friend, so I had a place to stay. And it was in a central location. It actually was a great place. But yeah, I definitely learned that over time, that you definitely want to make sure you do whatever you can to get that good first initial reaction, so that it'll build and build and build, and then you really fall in love with the place.
Excellent. Did you want to recommend the place that you stayed?
Sure. The place I stayed, there are a bunch of hostels around that are sort of all of similar quality. But what I stayed at was a place called the Tempo Hotel, about 10-minute walk from absolutely anything you can imagine, and pretty great rooms for at the time. There was about 36-37 US a night, private bathroom, normal hotel. And it was great place to stay, great location. And yeah, I can highly recommend that.
Excellent. We're going to wind this down. I've got 3 last questions, but before I get to those, anything else people should know before they plan a trip to Bucharest?
One is definitely, if you're getting around the city, please definitely take the metro system. The metro system is, again, it's a very efficient system. It'll get you absolutely anywhere you want to go in the city, and even way out to the outskirts. The taxis, that's probably the biggest negative about this city, is the taxis. Unfortunately, I'm a pretty calm guy, but I've ended up in quite a few frustrating situations with the taxi drivers. Pretty much you will not only get ripped off if you take one, you can't even imagine how much you'll get ripped off, unfortunately, with the taxi. So I would highly recommend. There are a couple taxi companies that are honest, but very hard to find it. They're very good at what they do, and it's a bit overwhelming. So I would definitely say stick to the metro system or the tram system that runs the streets as well. You'll get around just without any problems. Might take 10 minutes extra, but well worth it, in my opinion, at least. And another thing that I would say would be to get out there, absolutely try some of the sort of street food. It's not necessarily street vendors on the side of the street, but they have these small little shops that are selling just maybe one item. And you see this in many different items will be sold. So you have on one street, you'll have 10 of these different shops, each one selling something different. One of the cool things to have is a thing called Kovric. It's sort of like a pretzel, but sometimes you can get it stuffed with raisins, you can get it stuffed with chocolate, different kinds of jam and things like that. And it's a great treat. You'll see it's actually pretty amusing because you have a Kovric shop not on every corner. There's probably 3 or 4 on every block, and it just seems like a Romanian can't go more than 10 minutes without having one in their hands. I mean, they cost like almost nothing. I mean, really, I think they're like one lei, so it's not even 30 cents or so. And you'll see they just eat these. A lot of my Romanian friends, they eat 4 or 5 a day. They just always have. But it's a great little snack to have. And yeah, definitely get out there and try some of that.
Excellent. Last 3 questions. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Bucharest.
That things are never as they appear. I can't tell you how many times, like that art gallery I was talking about, where somebody would say, "We're going in here," and I'll be like, "You got to be kidding me!" And then 10 minutes later, I'm just shocked out of my mind of where I am now and the difference from the outward appearance and suddenly the situation that's inside that building or wherever it is or in that garden with no sign. I mean, almost every day it's something like that. Whether it's a restaurant, a bar, cafe.
And I'm getting the picture of a city in transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's very common. You can have a street here. A good example of it is you'll have a street where they're renovating a beautiful, beautiful several 100-year-old building. Next to it will be this really bizarre modern architecture office tower next to a dilapidated rundown building, next to an old communist block of apartments, next to some centuries old Russian-style Orthodox church. So it's you see it all kind of there together, and they're starting to figure it out. They're starting to see sort of a lot more activity happening. You're starting to see they actually built a couple new parks while I was there. They're trying to beautify the city quite a bit. They're trying to improve the transportation, which they've done a fantastic job. Yeah, you can tell that and people are excited. That's the other thing too. You can really, once you get to know people, you can tell that Romanians, I would say, even people from Bucharest, they're pretty optimistic. They'll talk pretty badly. Well, first they'll talk pretty negatively about their country, about their city. I want to go elsewhere. I want to go elsewhere. But as soon as somebody else says, "Oh, but I love this city. I've been here for 9 months," suddenly they brighten up and they're like, "It is a great city, isn't it?" And they go on and on and on about how much they love the city. So I think maybe it's sort of like a protection that they think that outsiders aren't going to like it, so they try to join the negative side first. But once they see people are enjoying it, suddenly they do a whole turnaround, and yeah, they're very positive about it. But and you can tell people are excited about the changes that are happening there, and yeah, it has a great feel to it as a result.
Excellent. Finish this sentence for me. You really know you're in Bucharest when what?
When your friends want to meet up at midnight for a ridiculously huge meal. They then want to party until 5 o'clock in the morning. They then want to go get another huge meal at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then they want to go to one of the all-day bars at about 9 a.m. I would say that's a pretty standard weekend right there that I was not used to. Let's put it that way.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize Bucharest in just 3 words, what 3 words would you choose?
Surprising. Hidden, in a way. And worthwhile, absolutely worthwhile. Definitely
Excellent.
worth visiting. And again, yeah, it's a shame that more people don't make it there.
Excellent. Well, we'll see if we can fix that. Where can people read more about your travels, sir?
Yes, they can head over to wanderingearl.com and they can read about my entire stint that I had over there in Romania or any of the other traveling I've been doing over the last several years or so.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming on the Amateur Traveler and telling us about your obvious love for Bucharest.
No, I hope it shined through. Hope we'll get some more people there. No, I appreciate you having me. I really do.
In news of the community, I wanted to thank all those people who filled out the demographic survey. You can still do that if you want to at amateurtraveler.com/survey, but I do have the number of results I was looking for right now. A couple interesting things about you, the listeners, or at least those of you who were willing to fill out the survey, is you tend to range in age mostly from 25 to 54 or so, and fairly evenly spread out at that point, some younger, some older. You tend to be above average education, with 86% of the people who filled out the survey have a 4-year college degree, and of those, almost 30% have a master's and another almost 10% have a doctorate. So a very educated group of people, and not surprising given the level of education. 82% of you make more than the median income in the United States, which is around $50,000, and about 42% of you make more than twice that. Interesting numbers. You are a well-educated group. I already knew you were smart and darn good-looking. I also heard this week from Spencer, who left a comment on the Travel to Puerto Rico episode. Great podcast. Chris's guest seems to make conflicting statements on safety. Plus, there's been a lot written about violent crime in Puerto Rico, especially the number of murders. However, looking at statistics, Puerto Rico, 26.2 homicides per 100,000 people, has a better homicide rate than Bahamas, U.S. Virgin Islands, Jamaica, Detroit, New Orleans, St. Louis, and Oakland. Although, Spencer, I don't know if that's comforting for me or not, because I won't go to Oakland. Yeah, that's actually one of the questions that we talked about before that episode, was how much to talk about the crime, because I definitely wanted people to be warned that there have been some warnings that have gone out about Puerto Rico. Our guests seemed to feel that they tended to be people who were in the drug trade, so I don't recommend doing that, period, let alone in Puerto Rico, and that it also tended to be in places that you could avoid. So take that for what it's worth. With that, we'll end this episode of The Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, as Spencer did, or send me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.